Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Discuss Detroit. I'm Jeanette Pierce, your hostess with the mostest with Detroit Experience Factory and the City Institute. And I'm really excited to have our special guest today, Eddie Baranak, of many bands and many great skill sets. And he's going to talk about some of those today. So welcome, Eddie.
Hey, Jeanette. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And disclaimer for everybody, we have known each other a little bit amount of time here.
Since before we could drive, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, I mean, so over 20 years, or it might even be 25 years is probably getting close there to 25, which means basically that we're old. that we could know someone that long, right? But it's been very interesting, and I'm glad you've known you over these 25 years. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Give us your 2-minute life story.
Okay, well, my name is still Eddie, and I'm 39. I grew up on the east side in the suburbs, and my dad's a landscaper. He owns a landscaping company, and he cuts lawns every day. And he's a working class man. And my mom stayed home and raised us. And I started playing rock and roll in Detroit probably in the late 90s when I was a 16 and 17-year-old. And I kind of watched the city change in the last 22 years. And let's see what else. I went to Wayne State, and I went to school for 3 years. And then I started touring with my band for a long time. So I got sick of going to the professor and saying, I can't really make the final because I'm going to be on the East Coast. But after 17 years of starting, I finally got my degree at Wayne State.
Woohoo.
And now I'm a father of a 5-year-old who's doing virtual kindergarten upstairs with my wife, who is a saint. And we now live on the east side. We live in Grosse Pointe. We're 6 houses from Detroit. We live in a city I told myself I would never live in. And but I've been surprised at some of the changes that are out this way too, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's really Detroit. It's Detroit plus, and I don't think many people focus on the perspectives going both ways. But anyway, that's my life story. I write songs, I play rock and roll, I toured a lot, I still do a little bit of touring, and now I record in the basement.
Hey, it's kind of full circle, right? You probably had done a couple basement recording sessions back, on cassette tapes, maybe back in the 90s, right?
Yeah,
And
reel
now,
to reel and cassettes, yeah.
yeah, and cassettes are making a comeback. Which is
You
kind
can
of
get, I think Deadbeat Beat has a cassette release actually, yeah.
that is definitely one of those things that makes me feel. I mean, records obviously, make sense in the sound and like all the things, but I do not totally get. I don't know. Do you get the whole? Is there a benefit? Is there an upside to tapes that you know of? I mean, and you don't have to go into that controversial topic, right? If you don't.
Well, I did put up shelving during the pandemic for over 700 cassettes in our basement. So I think there's still an audience. It might be small. I'm only
Yeah.
5 foot nothing, but there's an audience.
But most of them, what aren't most of them older cassettes, like cassettes that were released when cassettes were more of a thing,
Yeah.
but some folks still, I actually don't. I think I found a cassette of my parents recorded of me as a kid, and it said like Jeanette, like 5th grade, and I couldn't find anywhere to play it. So I'll have to, after COVID's over, come over and use your cassette player.
We'll have a tape party. I mean, but it's. Oh, now we're gonna go into my whole thing about digital. You know, you were able to find your childhood thing that was a tangible item that
Yeah.
has your voice on it. And we do wonder, right? I got videos of my child all over this thing. And I wonder in 20 years, what's he going to plug in my old phone and just go boop, boop, boop? I mean, who knows? But
Right. I definitely the tangible, I mean, even just photos, of the kids, like I make sure I every once in a while at least print them out, and put them in a book because the kids also like to look at the photos in a book, right? So that is that tangible is important for sure. So you started playing music, like you said, in high school, still playing music and writing. Talk about some of the upsides, downsides, changes, which I'm sure there have been a ton of, to being a Detroit area musician for so long?
God.
No, that's a lot of stuff. So, how about you want to start with what are some of the upsides of being from Detroit, and being part of this amazing Detroit music community?
It's I've said this many times, but it's like you're just passing through. You're another signpost. You're a post on these markers, and those markers are McKinney's Cotton Pickers, John Lee Hooker, Hastings Street. I mean, do you want me to keep going? Right? It just keeps going. Andre Williams, Fortune Records, Nathaniel Mayer, into the '60s rock and roll stuff, into the '70s rock and roll stuff. Parliament Funkadelic, right? Then you got the Gories in the '80s, and I could go on and on and on. But when I started out in 1998, I was aware of Detroit's history on a Motown, Alice Cooper level. And then I started playing locally, and our mutual friend, Ben Blackwell, he goes, my aunt and uncle are in a band. And I'm like, what? My aunt and uncle, like, work at some factory. Like, what do you mean your aunt and uncle are in a band? And Jack and Meg, Aunt Meg and Uncle Jack were in a band. And, that was sort of the world and the scene. They were maybe the seniors in high school and I was the freshman age-wise, but they all kind of brought me under their wing. And so I didn't, I kind of didn't know, my world was black and white. And then I went inside this world in the Detroit scene, and it just exploded like the Wizard of Oz, and the characters and the people that I've met, and the, people, Tim Vulgar. I mean, his name's Tim Vulgar, right? I know his name's not, but his name's Timmy Vulgar, and you just meet these characters and these flavors, and you would taste and see, and all of a sudden all these senses in your own being came alive that you didn't know you had. And so I don't know what it would be to experience it if you lived in Cleveland or Pittsburgh, but I don't really hear people talking about that Cleveland soul scene ever, or that sound of the Pittsburgh rock. I mean, people say, when we would tour a lot, people would be like, you're from Detroit, I can tell, because you'll write these pop songs, but they're kind of like, they got a ballsiness to them, or like a rougher edge to them. Can we say balls on this?
I think so, man. Hey, it's the internet, so anything's possible.
But I hesitate to use the word like Detroit grit. It's always these overused kind of phrases. But it was when we were taken out of Detroit and we would play outside of Detroit. We would play in New York and we'd play LA. We would play London, and you'd play with bands, and the guy would have the leather coat and the guy would have that look. And that look came from Detroit. That look came from the Stooges. That look is the MC5. That look is Alice Cooper Band. I mean, and the sounds of those bands, and they'd have the little buttons, and they'd be Detroit bands. And it's like you can't buy this. and so to be proud very proud of Detroit, very proud of where we come from. Was that even the question? I'm sorry.
It's just to get the ball rolling, and that's a lot of great stuff. And it's funny with the, Ben, obviously I've known Ben longer than I've known you. We grew up together, went to elementary school together, and he was, I similarly remember him talking about his uncle's band, but he was younger than us. And so I remember it being kind of like, yeah, kid, your uncle has a band. That's cute. Like we obviously didn't know very much at that time.
It was such a thing, like where my friends and my older sisters, they would take me to shows. We would go to concerts, at like St. Andrews Hall or the State Theater, the Fillmore. And those were national bands, touring bands passing through. The minute I started playing Detroit clubs and Detroit bars when I was 16, 17 years old, the minute I started playing, before I started playing down here, like a couple months before we were really playing downtown at the Magic Stick and the Gold Dollar, like in the Cass Corridor area, all of a sudden I stopped seeing all those national bands overnight. They meant nothing to me. They were just, I was moving out of there anyway, and I was looking for something. And I didn't know what I was looking for. So, I'm just like the 17-year-old, you're writing songs, you're not any good, but you're trying to get some attention. And like the minute I started playing downtown, I started playing with the Henchmen, the Greenhorns, the Soledad Brothers, Rocket 455, Detroit Cobras. I could go on and on, but all those bands, the Dirt Bombs, and I was like, oh my God, this is speaking to me. This is feeding me. This is giving me. I was stealing ideas from these people. They were the seniors. I was a freshman. I was stealing from them left and right, and I was so lucky that they let me into their little, I thought, this is their club. And I kind of like snuck, I rode my bike through it in the bushes and I kind of snuck in the back door and here we are, I'm kind of great. I'm grateful.
Well, and for those that are younger who might be watching this, you didn't just Google cool shows on your iPhone, right? To find out about these things, right? So that having it, I think that sense of a club was a little bit more so, right? Because it really was word of mouth. It was secret, not like necessarily being trying to be kept secret, but it certainly wasn't on the headline of the Detroit Free Press, or again, there wasn't Google or a lot of online opportunities to find out about things back then.
It was organic.
Yeah.
There was no money behind it. There was no branding. There was no company. There was nobody in LA nobody cared. And it was reading a Metro Times, an alternative weekly, and you had to suss it out by the name of a band or the club that might be attractive to me. And then Car City Records was 4 blocks from my house. So I'd walk in there as a kid and I'd recognize the guy at the counter was in Bantam Rooster, and Tom Potter, the Bantam Rooster guy, he'd go, "You need this record." And I go, I don't, this is the first Parliament Funkadelic record album, Eddie. You need this. And, they're basically like giving me like, oh, this is my Bible. Okay, this is my Bible. And so, I was getting an education, Metro Times, and a record store, and word of mouth, like you said.
Yeah. So what I've noticed too, when we work with other cities with City Institute or have people come, Detroit Experience Factory, we've taken 130,000 people around since we began. But the focus on locals are more about their own backyard, right? So there's so much that we don't even realize as, east side, west side, southwest. We're so segmented. But then seeing it through other people's eyes is interesting, right? When people come here and they think, oh my God, you have this, and we kind of take it for granted. I think, oh, you don't go see this band or you don't see somebody for $5 that is selling out places, like that is something. And I was lucky too. Again, the people that I knew, and I'm not a musically inclined person or artistic in the traditional sense, but being, friends with people, I was just amazed also, right? I'd be at a show, I'd be at a place, and when I was 16, 17, the music menu, I started hanging out there, and I literally knew nothing. And my mom loves to sing, and I had music around me. Ben would come over, and my mom we'd have hang out in the basement. Everybody remembers the basement on Audubon, and there's a big kind of hangout area, but then little storage area at the bottom of the stairs, and all my mom's records were there. And so Ben would come over and I'd say, take one, look through it, take a few. We weren't doing anything with them, and but just having the ability to be tangentially a part of it was always just a lot of lessons learned and a lot of things learned about music along the way. But I guess I was going to jump into, what are there negative parts being, about the scene in Detroit then, or, and maybe it's just a general music negative thing, or I don't know if there's something specifically that was frustrating about Detroit in your head.
Nothing negative.
No comment. I guess you can say no comment. Or I guess, lessons learned, maybe that's maybe a better way to put it.
Yeah, I'm 22 years in on this, and I tend to reflect a lot more than maybe I should, and the good stuff does rise in the memory bank.
Yeah.
And a lot of the negative stuff is probably my own self-sabotaging and my own doing. As far as a city as a whole, in terms of the negativity, sure, there's stories, but I think there's stories like in any group of high school kids, or when you go to any high school reunion. And I don't think that I think there's a lot of there is a lot of sadness, in the music scene, but I don't think it's anything that is special. Detroit doesn't have the monopoly on negative aspects.
Right. I mean, when you have such a, like you said, a lot of times it becomes very close knit and very, everybody knows everybody, but, and then even when people quote unquote grow up, it still seems sometimes like high school in that way then, and cliques and fights and all of that jazz.
Like one of the, you might feel that Detroit is negative for you if maybe you're not being true to yourself, because Detroit has a really, really good BS meter, I think, especially in the music. If you're into music in this city, you have to know its history. You have to know where you come from, where you are today, and where it may go. That you're passing, it's passing through you, right? And you're just here. And like I said earlier, and I think maybe if people have a negative aspect to it, it's people called them out, and we smell the BS stuff pretty fast and pretty quickly. I remember my first gig in Detroit, and I was like, it was the day before senior high school, before I had my last, August for senior year. I was 18 years old, and I played with the Henchmen, the Greenhorns, and the Fighting Pinheads. And I remember, it was just like, oh my God, these, they accepted me, but
Where was that show? Do you remember?
That was in the Garden Bowl of the Magic Stick. It was a Sunday night because our friend Co was a bartender, and she would have her friends play. So Jack White would play, Brendan Benson would play, the Sights would play. A lot of bands would just, oh, it's Sunday night, we'll just play. Co's bartending, it's free show, no one's charging. Like, no one made money, nobody charged. It was just like, well, I don't know, it's Sunday. Like,
and that's what we would do. We'd be like, oh, what are we going to do on a Sunday? And that's one of those uniquely Detroit things, I think, right? Is, again, where do you go see, such amazing bands for, and it's just this casual thing, whatever,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty fun.
The environment that we grew up in, and it's just, we'll go bowl over there at the at the Garden Bowl, and then we're gonna play around 9, and then that's it.
That's funny. So with the Sights, just for a minute, so that was what, 17 years? Is that what you said about?
Yeah, about
15. I mean, obviously bands evolve that's most bands out there. And now what are you doing musically? Tell folks about that a little bit.
So I'll always dabble in little things. I played guitar with the Detroit Cobras for a while. Did some overseas stuff. I did a record with Scott Morgan, who sang with the Rationals in the 60s, the Sonics Rendezvous Band in the 70s, with members of the Stooges and the MC5. He's still kicking. He's my mom and dad's age. His voice is better than ever. And then my wife, Nicole, and I, we have a band called French Method. She sings, plays bass, and writes. I play like a kind of a demented organ. We have a sax and a drum. So it's kind of a jazz ensemble, but it doesn't sound like jazz. And then my main focus, though, is the Scrappers. So my main outlet for songwriting. So this piano behind me is where I'll do a lot of writing in my living room. And, they'll turn into Scrapper songs, or, scraps of songs that I had left over from the Sights days. I'll revisit an idea I had started writing when I was 19. And then I'll go, hey, that's not so bad. I'll pull it into today because I've lived life in between.
Yeah.
And it's like writing with some other human being. I'm not that guy anymore. So the Scrappers are the main gig. We have an album and a single 7-inch out. And we had some gigs booked. We had just started playing Windsor and going over, and we did a radio show on C-Jam, our friend Ron Leary. And we were building like a little Windsor, Detroit, kind of a little bridge there. And we were going over to play our second Windsor show. And that got canceled, as did the rest of our gigging. And so we've, the band has shifted to sort of doing home recording with microphones. And, my boss at my job says you gotta, accept, adapt, and adjust. And I think that's one of the major. I think you called it creative. What
Crisis breeds innovation.
crisis breeds innovation.
And
You know,
Detroit, that's what we said, like Detroit has seen, I mean, that's been a theme of a lot of our tours, innovation, inspiration, the story of Detroit, right? It can be summed up in that in so many ways. And because Detroit's seen so many challenges, and I think it's hard because it sucks that it's this way that we've seen so many challenges and more crises maybe than other cities, or worse than a lot of other cities. And certainly this current one is, hitting us harder than a lot of places as well. But if there's an upside to it, I guess it's that, or a silver lining, that we have experience dealing with crazy crises, right? And responding and adapting and stepping up to doing stuff. So that's where, I mean, when people ask me what's going on in Detroit and what do I think of the future, that's where my hope always comes from, right? So like you were saying with your talk about more about what your boss said about adapting, and that's what you guys have been doing too.
yeah, like as a band, like exactly. It's like as a band, we had our whole summer booked. We had all these gigs lined up, and you just go, and So what we did was instead we all record in our each guy records in the basement, and we get good at home recording. Like I was very fearful. I'm not into the home recording vibe. I don't want to go like this and then go like this and then have to go like this and then play piano, but then be on my computer all night. And, so what we did though was I got into it. I overcame my fear and I learned a new tool. And now, we record at home and we put it all together. And, good comes out of this stuff. You know what I mean? It's Detroit, it's like, you don't I hate these cliches, but they're kind of true. It's like you just put your head down, get to work. Like my dad's a landscaper. He's just like, shut up, like work. Like you just work. Like it's
Well, and it's not I mean, there's some people that are like, why don't we have this? They should do that. And then there's people like, well, why don't we have this? Or I guess I'll do it, right? I mean, we need
yeah,
this. And so someone's gonna just step up and try to do it, right? That's also something that I don't see as much in other cities. Or again, when people come here, they're amazed at, wait, you mean you just did that without like tons of money, or you just tried that without, I think that's why crisis breeds innovation, right? Is because, or the older, necessity is the mother of invention. Because if you have resources, if everything's going great, then, then you're not really, there's no reason to change things, right? And so
it,
that's a big part of obviously our history forever, right? Is a rise from the ashes, as we talk about history, right?
it's yes, and like in this city, it's not like there's a lot of companies. People don't like. We're gonna wait. We're gonna wait and see what the focus group says before we plug that hole and figure out what to do. Like you said, it's like no, like oh, Tara will just fix the motorcycle. Tara will just do this. It's just like we just do it. It's just like we don't sit around. We're not comfortable. If we have a problem, you just fix it. And the city has all these resources. You could sit here and name all the buildings and the whatever that's great and old and awesome, but it's like the people, man. The people have a vibe. The people have a work ethic. It's just like, who cares? We'll just go do it. I'm not gonna sit around and wait for the accolades. It
Because we
has to get.
can't. No one's coming to say, we don't want to be saved. We're not waiting for someone to save us. And the cavalry isn't coming. I mean, that's what's unfortunately been, there were things where we would have been really nice to have a lot of help and a lot of money and a lot of, more traditional responses to some of our challenges, but we didn't
I
have that, so you just do it. And especially obviously our Black community has been dealt with so many tragedies and so many awful policies, and so they are the obviously backbone of everything that happens here, because they've always had to do more with so little.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of those, do you have a favorite historic person? I mean, it doesn't have to be long ago history. I mean, it can be long ago history, but any albums, I mean, or people, just some of your favorite Detroit artist or music related stuff.
Oh God, there's so many.
I rattle some off, especially as I know you're a big, you worked with Emma Liebler, right? And on a lot of like music history. I mean, so you're definitely not one of the, when you're saying no, your history, that is something that is a big passion for yours, especially on the music side in Detroit.
There was a guy that we recently lost to COVID, and his name was Bob Mays. And Bob Mays he was ancient. I don't know. He was probably like 75 years old, but he had a record store for years at 8 and John R on 8 Mile. And the only reason I knew about the record store was I was a DJ at the Garden Bowl in the Magic Stick when I was like 18 years old. And I overheard the senior class, the guys in all the rock bands, talking about this record shop. So I found it on my own and I went in there and I'm like, this guy has the most amazing records. So like my records in our dining room right here, like, I don't know, 20% are from Bob Mays, and Bob Mays just passed like 2 weeks ago. So like, I think of like people like that who kind of affected me or shaped me. I never told Bob Mays how much he kind of like, like I was thinking about a record I'll never find, and like Bob Mays had the record. Like, I mean, more times that I can count. But there's guys like that I think of. There's I got to jam with Farouk Zbey a couple of times, who was in Griot Galaxy, this great guy, and ML Liebler hooked up the gig. And I'll never forget what he said to me. We were doing a Little Richard song, and I looked at Farouk. I was playing guitar, and Farouk was playing, I think, clarinet at the time. And I go, Farouk, who's gonna do the solo on the song? Me or you? And Farouk just he goes, we won't know until we get there. And I was like, oh my, like this 25-year-old white guy, rock and roll guy. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even play the song. Like, what is, I still think of what?
Yeah, I mean, you wanted to figure everything out. And he's like, just go with it, man.
Yeah. Like I wanted the answer, and I had Farouk, and I was like, I'm just going to ask him, and what's the answer? And he's like, dude. And I was like, I still think about that one sentence he said to me. I mean, it's like, so, something like that has an effect on me. And all the people in the bands I'd mentioned earlier, they have an effect on me. Even it goes back decades and stuff. I'm really into my genealogy and my research end of things in Detroit right now. And I recently reached out to Dan Austin,
Yeah.
historic,
We had Dan on our Discuss Detroit show not that long ago. Got a couple of his books back here. It's good fun.
and it's like, what it's like. And another friend of mine, Mike Dukevich. I mean, these are all guys, they're like historical Detroit preservation type guys. And it's funny, like I used to kind of bug them or ask them about a Soul 45 from Detroit from the late 50s, the 60s, right? And now I'm like, hey man, 12th Street in the 1890s. And and he's like, world, that's what I kind of find more fascinating. I know your question was about bands or people or influences, but this city never lacks for a story. So it's kind of like,
Oh, and that's why, it's a question with this, even when I was trying to, doing Discuss Detroit, whatever, I didn't also even, where did that name come from? I just said, hey, what if I like alliteration? Wait, no one's used Discuss Detroit before? I like Googled it. I was like, there's not been an article or a website. Like, that's weird. And again, some of the best things aren't big, long strategy sessions, or focus groups. Like you say, you're just like, hey, how do we do this? But it's all about just conversations. I was like, I want to just talk with people that I would love to talk with. And yeah, I'll throw a couple questions out there, but to just get the ball rolling. But you certainly have answered it plenty and don't have to do it specifically. The one final one that I do like to end with though, is I want to, if people are watching this, what they want to do something, they want to help in some way. Do you have a call to action for them, either around your work, around Detroit? I mean, literally, this is your platform. Thanks for being on today, and tell the world what they can go out and do.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Jeanette. And all I'll say is wear the mask, wear a mask. That's it.
That's it. That's a really important one, obviously. Well,
Yeah.
I will say find the Scrappers on Facebook. I know we finally got Eddie on Facebook, what, just a couple years ago? And by we, I had
Bro,
nothing to do with it, but I'm just saying the world got Eddie on Facebook, a little bit of a late adopter there, or the opposite of pushing away for a long time.
yeah.
So, but it's helpful to find, there's probably a website that they'll find through that. You can buy the album on the website.
On
See,
our website, thescrappersband.com.
there you go.
Yeah. Look us up.
You still get money for sites purchases? You want people to buy sites things still, or we're just
You
not
can
so much?
contact me via the site's Facebook. I still have a closet full of a few items, and I do sell things, a lot of overseas stuff. But yeah, it still does an all right business.
Well,
I can't pay for a haircut apparently, but it does all right.
it was I mean, the sites, is a big part of obviously my I guess childhood and early adulthood. So and they are on Spotify now, but I don't know, or if that's like good, should we not listen to Spotify? Do we want, like
I'm not gonna get it either way, so just listen to Spotify.
listen to Spotify and then contact Eddie for the album.
That's
There
it.
you go. So if you can't decide and you want to start with one, you can listen on Spotify to the different albums and then see what Eddie's got in storage. So, well,
Totally.
thank you so much. This was so great, and I look forward to just finding some time after COVID to get together again, or have a Zoom conversation, maybe over drinks sometime. I feel like I've been leaning into some Zoom happy hours, especially with almost 2-year-old triplets. I was saying, like, I was kind of quarantined for a year before COVID happened.
Right,
I had
right.
triplets. So I was like, oh, good, I get to get back out into the world, maybe see some live shows. And then it was wah wah. But anyway, this is, like I said, there's a lot of silver linings, and music is still with us in a different way, and is still inspiring and making people feel good at a time that we desperately need uh, things that make us feel good on some level. So thanks for your contribution to all of that, and to Detroit, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
night. Okay, everybody, we'll see you on another Discuss Detroit soon. And don't forget to check out all of them at thecityinstitute.com. And you can also check out all of our virtual tours, including our new Detroit music series at detroitexperiencefactory.org. Have a great day.